Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. For the next few episodes, our attention is going to be focused on this river valley. In this episode, we are going to be building road and rail infrastructure up into the valley for our next small town build. So it's going to be a pretty short episode, very focused. It's all about infrastructure this time around. And this is where we're going to start our build, right in this little chunk of land here. And there's really no reason to beat around the bush. So let's get started. Okay, so like I said at the end of the last video, I think it's time we start thinking about filling in the rest of the region, making everything work together as a complete place rather than just focusing on the downtown core. We're going to start here. Now, what I have planned is several town sites. I think about 4 or 5 of them. Now, all these town sites I'm going to be building are going to be very small, tiny towns. The first one I think we're going to be building is one back in here. Now, the way this City Skylines kind of abstracts population, they're going to be, population-wise, they're going to be very tiny, like a few hundred people. They're going to look larger than they are, but they're not going to drastically increase our population in any way. But they will serve functions. This one out here is going to be basically a resource-based community, probably logging, and probably going to connect this highway here through here and connect up to this mining site as well. So logging and mining is going to be its main industries. I've already done a couple of dry runs here trying to figure out road infrastructure, railroad infrastructure. This is going to be infrastructure heavy episode. I'm not sure if I'm going to actually get into any detailing here. So my problem is trying to build infrastructure that looks interesting but isn't too outrageous at the same time. I want visual interest, and it has to be somewhat practical. It can't be just completely utterly outrageous. Also, keeping in mind kind of the region we're building in. We're not building like a mega city here. The cities we're building are populations, probably I would say, if we think about this region, if like I said, the population is a bit of an abstraction in the game, but if you look at the cities visually, we're talking anywhere between 1 to 5 million people. So nothing big. Of course, the way the game handles population, we're probably going to max out population anywhere between 150 to 200,000. But visually, it's going to look a lot bigger. Now, right down here, this is also going to be the home of a future town site, but I'm holding off building this until I also kind of mentioned here we're going to be building a highway project cutting through this valley. It's probably going to be two highways. There's going to be an old highway that kind of snakes along the valley floor and is really windy and dangerous to drive on, and then we're going to have a government highway project that's going to cut higher up on the hillside and be much straighter and safer and faster. We're going to ignore the fact that the highway essentially doesn't go anywhere off the map. There's nowhere to go out there, but I can't pass up the opportunity to take advantage of some of these I have some really nice views in here, and I just can't pass up the opportunity to build something up there to take advantage of that. So that's the only reason why the highway is going to exist for there. Now, like I said, I've done a couple of dry runs here and I haven't figured out a good solution. So we're going to run some rail service up this valley because resource-based economy, logging, and that sort of thing. It would need the railroad to transport that material. It doesn't need the railroad, but I think I would like it to have a railroad. So I think the first thing I'm going to do here is change the course of the actual railroad. Now, this was the railroad I built when making the map, and the only real purpose of this railroad is to establish the outside connections. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it when I built it. What I'm going to do here, and this is unfortunately not going to be entirely realistic. At least I don't think it will be realistic. Visually, it'll be quite interesting. And, you know, this isn't a real place, so we can take a few liberties. So what am I going to do with the railroad? I am going to run it right along the river edge. Now, the reason why I say this is not realistic is because given the region we're building in, you would not build right along the river edge simply because springtime flooding along the river, it would be totally impractical to actually build a railroad right here. It would be flooded out every season pretty much. So that's something. Now, since the game doesn't actually have seasonal flooding, it actually does if we really wanted it in I think it's there's a water mod. We could actually enable seasonal flooding. I tried it long ago and it's not fun. It's very difficult to plan for the flooding. I had a little tiny town completely flooded out by it, so I'm not going to do that. But we are going to build the railroad right along the river's edge. Impractical, but I think it's going to be necessary in order to fit everything in a way that actually looks visually interesting, but at the same time is also somewhat functional. Now when we get to this point, we can actually go back up to the original level of the highway. Now I'm assuming the grade here is going to be pretty flat and we're not going to have any issues with that. I have to admit I don't know much about railroads, but I try to keep everything within about 2% grade. I will fudge that if necessary. It is just a game. As long as it visually doesn't look wrong, I'm okay with it. But where possible, I will try to conform to nothing more than 2% for a gradient on the track. And I do try to keep the curves reasonable, but I also I am a bit flexible with that as well. Now, why am I doing this with the railroad track? Well, I'm just simply trying to get it out of my way, so it's not... I want to get away from the road. I want space to be able to... I want to build in like an industrial park in this area. So I need room for that. And I need room for overpasses and an interchange. So I just need the main track out of the way. Okay, I think that's okay. It doesn't look outrageous. But like I said, it's not at all realistic. They would not on a river. They would not build that close. Like here, what I got here, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 meters. This would be that would be fairly reasonable, but a meter above the water level, no, they would definitely not have done that. But you know what? It's going to make some really pretty views from the train as it rides through this area. So, and I'm all about making things look visually interesting. So it's definitely going to do that. Now, I also, first, before we do anything else here, I need to get rid of these trees so I can actually see what I'm doing. So we're going to have a railroad crossing and a highway crossing. So we're going to build these crossings where this river is particularly narrow. So there's probably going to be okay, we're going to attempt the first crossing here. And, ooh, look at that. The game's not even complaining. Excellent. Okay, so that will be our rail crossing. And just take a little look here, make sure it's fairly straight. It's not, no kinks, no bumps. Okay, that will be fine. So, what I'm imagining for this area right down in front here, eventually this is going to be like an industrial park. So what we can do, so having rail lines run through it, not unreasonable. It's very likely trains would pull into the industrial park. So if we pull this out all the way, we have a grade of 1.3. That's fine. We do have to make a little adjustment here so this makes a little more sense. That would probably not be how they would join up. Okay, we'll go over that for the moment. Now, we also need the railroad track to join back up with this. So the problem is, what the big problem here is, we will also have a highway bridge crossing this river as well. And let's just draw that in so we have a idea of where it might go. Now, my problem is I want this rail line to also reconnect to the main line over here, but I also have a highway here as well. I have to admit, infrastructure is not my strong suit at all. So what would make the most sense would be to curve off from here like so, but if I want to keep to the at least 2%, we are going to have to take it out at least that far. Well, I guess what we could do here is we can get a little creative with the road. Now, another thing I need to do is I'm just going to put down some very basic roads, basically to where two of the main streets in this little town might be. So this little town doesn't have a name yet. It might be a bit too early to start thinking about a name for it. I haven't really pinned down exactly what its main features are yet. I have some basic ideas, but nothing concrete yet. So the problem is I want to get road access into this area down here, but that's, with all the railroad tracks, that's really hard. I think in this particular section, we might have to resort to at-grade crossings. Now, because these are really, really tiny towns, I don't know, like this is really going to be a small community. It might not have a passenger station. It might just have cargo. And this is all industry. This is going to be all industry down here. So I think it might be just easier to work with at-grade crossings down here, I think. Anyway, we're gonna give it a little try and see what happens. Unfortunately, I left some of my experiments with the road builder trying to make custom tracks in place there, which makes everything really janky. I'm gonna have to take all that out and redo it. I have no idea how realistic this is. And I still need a road access to get down here. Okay, I'm just gonna keep building. I'm gonna probably just shut up for a little bit and just think about this and how it's all gonna fit together. Okay, I think that accounts for the main road connections, I hope. Like I said, this isn't my strong suit, and I tend to make really, let's just say, interesting highway connections. Okay, I've been staring at this for quite some time now, trying to figure out how to get roads down here to, give access to an industrial park. One problem is once you built up something like this, it's really difficult to see around it anymore, because my options are now hemmed in by what I've already built. I could tear it all out and start again. I don't really want to do that. I'm not necessarily looking to make a perfect road layout, but I want to make something that, essentially functional. I don't want to get too hung up on efficiency, because that sometimes leads to perfect, road layouts, which they're wonderful puzzles to try to figure out, but they don't necessarily look particularly realistic either. So one possible solution I've thought of here, and it's not ideal, but the real world is never ideal, so sometimes there are road layouts that don't make a lot of sense. Now, I put in this key wall down here, and there is enough clearance for a road, and I do have a custom road that's a little more narrow than usual. It's just a 2-lane road without sidewalks or parking or anything like that, and I'm pretty sure I could snake it. Yeah, it just, so I have anarchy on. If I don't, even with anarchy off, I can get it. It just barely fits in here. So let's get that. Okay, and it really, why would you do that? Why? Okay, let's try it with anarchy and see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna just try taking out the rail for 1 sec. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to do an at-grade crossing. Now, this particular industrial park area I'm building here is not super dense. So, or at least I'm not planning for it to be super dense. It's going to be, a handful of maybe larger industrial buildings with lots of parking lots and open spaces around them. So it's not going to be densely packed in. So we're going to try it. If this does become an issue, we're going to have to come back and think about it. I'm crossing my fingers that it will be good enough and we won't have a problem. Now this is just kind of leftover for when I made the map. Working with water in this game is an interesting experience. That's all I'm going to say on it. If I had hair, I would have pulled it all out with the water in this game. Now, what we're going to do on this side is we snake the rail line and the road up the river valley. The train track is going to essentially hug the river as much as possible. We're going to dike it. Oh God, I can't say that word. Dike it up a little bit, so essentially that's what it's not only just the railroad track, it's also functioning as a bit of a dike to stop flooding. And the highway is going to snake up along over the other side, just slightly up on the hillside. Okay, so let's think about the actual town site. So where is this going to go? And let's take a little look at the terrain here, see what we have. So we don't have a lot of room. I don't really want to do a lot of terraforming here. I think I do have to do a little bit though. I think, yeah, you see the terrain is a bit... This is just more an artifact of when I made the map. This terrain down here is, I think, lower than the river. So actually that would make it a lake. Do I want it to be a lake? Like I said, this is not a big place. One main street, a collection of houses, maybe a bit of industry, and maybe we can cross over here and maybe build a few things on the other side of the river, but there isn't going to be a lot up here. It's going to be a very, very small town. Now I also want to connect this highway up, although I'm not going to make it a highway, I'm going to make it a local road. I don't necessarily want traffic trying to cut through here. I really want most of the traffic to stay on the main highway. So if we put in a local road, hopefully the speed limit will be a deterrent. I think what's going to happen here is, let me get the terrain lines on. Okay, never mind. So what this is going to do, I think, is it's going to loop around the lake, come out about here, and it's going to become essentially Main Street for downtown. So I think for the highway, what we're going to do is we're going to follow this main train line right here, this dark one. I'm going to pick it, and I'm just going to follow it along here. Now, I am planning on putting a little small cargo station in here. The size of now, I know that I've seen the small cargo station out there floating around. Obviously, I don't have access to it. Maybe I can go look for it. But a lot of what I'm thinking about now is a lot of the building. I'm kind of thinking that the asset editor should be out soonish. I'm putting that in quotation marks. So some of my building decisions are being a bit influenced by that. That's sort of one of the reasons why I'm kind of like holding off on starting to build downtown of Queensport. I am holding out for more variety of assets to be able to play with down there. This is going to be an extremely tiny town, so it doesn't really warrant a cargo station, except for this is actually pretty easy access for the ore mine. We're going to probably do a lot of logging up in the area, so resource extraction, right? So that's the main reason why the cargo station is going to be there. There's also going to be a fair amount of farming up and along and down here as well, so that also can utilize the cargo station. So that's the justification for it, even though the town size is going to be pretty minuscule. Now for the train. Okay, the train is going to be a little different. It can't be so bendy and so curvy. It has to be much straighter. Okay, we got quite the elevation change. Now this is also an artifact from when I was building the map. Trying to get the river heights to be correct was another huge challenge. So I've kind of created this area here where it's a bit higher than the river. And the problem with this is the water level here is higher than the water level here. So if I go in with the terrain tool and try to level this all out to here, I'm going to be very, very unhappy with the result. But I think maybe what we could do So this leaves tons of area for like small little farms and stuff. These aren't going to be massive farms. There's plenty of places in the interior valleys where they're fairly narrow, so there's definitely farmland, but it's also constrained by the rivers and the mountains and stuff. So they're just going to be small farms, and they're going to be all the way up the valley. Okay. And that's it for this episode. So yeah, just infrastructure. Not the most exciting thing for me to build, but in order to grow the city, it's vitally important. And sometimes we have to focus on the parts of the city we're not most enthusiastic about building. Our next episode, though, is all going to be about landscape detailing. It's not going to be a very big area of the map, but it's going to be, I think it's going to look quite nice when we're done. And after that, we will move on to starting to fill in that entire valley we just laid roads in. Until next episode, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.